So folks, if you want to earn a PhD, before even you get into PhD and when you are applying for PhD, the first question that comes in the e-form that you are going to fill up is, how many research papers have you published? Or can you share the links to the research papers that you have published? So we, being part of the technical organizations, part of corporates, working on many complex and huge projects, playing with technologies, so on and so forth. We do a lot of research, but how many times did we really publish it as a formal paper? And do you think formal research papers are valuable? Hello, hi there. Welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series. The Guiding Voice for a better future. This podcast is to help professional students, IT employees, and entrepreneurs to shape their careers. Dear listeners, in every episode, we interact with industry experts or academicians or coaches or leaders across the globe to drive some insightful conversations that will help our audience learn wonderful things. Also, we share an interesting trivia or a fun fact about the IT world or technology towards the end. Thank you for tuning in. This is Naveen and with my co-host Sudhakar. So folks, today we are going to discuss a topic, importance of research in technical roles. And we are pleased to welcome Suman to cover that topic for us.
Suman Day is a software development specialist with 6 years of work experience at SAP Labs India with an MTech degree from BITS Pilani in software engineering. He is an IEEE member with more than 15 technical research publications, including 8 in IEEE research papers and book chapters on cybersecurity. Suman has chaired international research conferences and is a reviewer of different reputed conferences. At this young age, Suman's journey has seen him win multiple accolades as a thought leader and continues to draw his focus on development and research activities for industry academy collaboration. Suman, welcome to our show. Let's get started.
Thank you so much, Sudhakar. It's a pleasure being here and being part of this initiative. And it's really great. Whatever you're doing, I'm happy to be onboarded here. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the kind support from the patrons like you. We are able to continue this podcast series for last 1 year, and we are hoping that, with the support from people like you, we will be able to continue it for more time. So Suman, can we talk a bit about your passion towards research?
If I talk about passion, I really have to go back to my college days. That really started even before I joined industry. It was my college professor who introduced me to this particular field. And I remember those days very fondly because research was a topic that was not really taken easily. People were like, okay, research papers, that's like some big, buzzword. How can we do research? There are PhD scholars who do that. I did my bachelor's in computer applications to start with, even before doing my MTech. And at that point of time, it was like, okay, this is too much. PhD is a long shot. So there comes my college professor and guide, and he tells me, Suman, if we are doing a final year project, we are not going to do any applications we will do an application, but before that, we will make something that gets published. So he helped me, take this ship of research, and luckily with his guidance, I was able to publish 2 papers on encryption, and they were published in 2 international journals, and that's where my journey began. There was a gap of 3.5 years, but again, you fall, to some great support at times. Same thing happened with me. Got some great support, great mentors in my organization, some great colleagues who were always supporting me. And after 3.5 years, I again started, and 2020 alone, I published around 11 articles, 1 book chapter included. So everything happened, and pandemic, although it was a bit tough on all of us, it gave me more time, the travel times decreased, and we are not, bothered about getting up early next morning at 8 o'clock. You can probably take that 1 hour and probably 3 hours at night, and all of a sudden I had 4-5 hours extra, and it was really helpful and helped me in this journey of research. Publish more, get more, and it really helped. So that's how it has been.
Yeah, I actually took 2 things from here.
Mm-hmm.
One, Bangalore traffic, if you avoid it, you can save a lot of time. Second, on the serious note, during the pandemic situation, these unprecedented tough times that the world is going through, if we really put our time to right use, 11 publications in 1 calendar year, that is really phenomenal. Right?
Thank you.
And, really surprised and really curious that, during your academic time itself, you published 2 research papers which got published in international papers. Amazing. So well done there, Suman.
Thank you, Sudhakar.
So, Suman, how do we relate this research with the technology? Like you are with SAP, a phenomenal company to work for. So, how is this connection, this marriage between this academia, if I may call that research part, to this corporate world? How do you connect both of them together?
More than SAP, I guess, from an SAP perspective, it's definitely the support I get. But when you talk about relating or connecting research with technology, it goes beyond. I mean, anybody listening to this podcast, I can tell one thing, like academia and industry are not, separate topics. They are very much connected. And you take the biggest disruptions around the globe, whether on machine learning or on a faster retrieval of data or building trust via blockchain. It comes down to how deeper we get and present and improved version of what we are working on. It can be anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be specific to an organization. You take the biggest names, every disruption happened because they knew their customers well. I mean, forget technical research. You have to know things, better and deeper so that you create an impact rather than just, moving around on what technology we are using. There are sufficient amount of technologies out there, but at the end of the day, you build value. So when we talk about research, you finally, imagine, let's say a open source contributor. You contribute regularly and you are probably, working on Node.js or a Python, and there are open modules out there. So why not you take up a module and understand what it does and then prepare something of your own with the same features, but maybe with a better performance or a better efficiency. You compare both the results, you present it somewhere, you get it published. I mean, at the end of the day, you are doing what you were doing as a techie, as a software geek, as a programmer. Just that you're getting your results in a more formulated way and you're publishing it for the world to know. So more or less, I mean, you talk about industry, you talk about academia, you talk about research, you talk about technology, all of them were somewhere connected. It's a beautiful amalgamation. It's just how we perceive it and how to take it forward.
Excellent. I'm sure with the excitement that you created in your answer, many of our audience are thinking to start their way of contributing and starting that research and publishing paper. So Suman, for those who want to publish papers, where do you start? What are the possible means of publication?
From a technical standpoint, there are reputed conferences, there are journals, there are magazines. You have some great publishers out there. I mean, you have to keep a track. You just have to Google probably like what are the upcoming technology conferences, research conferences which are coming up. You can look for IEEE, Springer, Elsevier, ACM. There are multiple conferences which are happening. You can publish it there. There are magazines out there. There are journals out there. So these are great platforms or mediums to get started if you are looking forward to technical research. Now, where do we get started? Now, I talked about a Node.js use case or a Python use case. You have an open module. So if you have such comparisons, that's good enough to be published. You have a new idea that you think is groundbreaking or something which nobody has done. That's a great idea to be published. Let's say you have a sample space of 500 people and you understood that there is a trend coming out of it. That's a survey. Go ahead and publish it. I mean, it gives you a possibility of not just publishing your topic, but even before you do that, you are reading a lot of things. You understand those things better. Even if you're doing a survey of you talk about, surveys and you're talking about 500 people or 500 items, and there is a possibility that you'll get to learn a lot more about them. I mean, you were not clear about them maybe initially, but then when you are going for such topics, we talked about an idea, we talked about comparisons. Now there's one more topic like surveys. So let's say you have a sample space of 500 and you want to do get a study on them, like how they respond to a particular feature or how they get a different sort of insights about those 500 items that you have taken up. You can get a trend and that can be published. So we had a problem statement that me and my mentee Megha was looking into, and it was part of MTech topic when we were doing our MTech in software engineering from BITS, and the topic was on cloud security, and we were talking about hyperscalers. So we discussed about what are the features that they bring in and how are they different from each other, and we published a paper. So even that material is good enough for getting published. I mean, you are basically relating academia with industry. And what else can we do? It might be a daunting task, at the beginning, because you're thinking about publishing your first paper. So how do you go about it? You might not have an idea of your own. So at that point of time, a sample space, or let's say you go back to the Node.js or a NPM or a library, open library that we talked about. You can dig deeper, understand a library, you rip it apart maybe and come up with something of your own. You compare what your results are with what you already have seen in the existing library. You get the results published, or you probably do a mathematical simulation, create a POC around what you have done. And although you are a starter, you're a beginner, you're basically comparing two things that was existing and something that you have created. Maybe you have changed one loop. Something was running with two loops, you have made it in one because of your geniusness with mathematics, and all of a sudden your results are better than what was existing. Good enough to get published. That's a fabulous start. We talked about the mediums where you can get started, and we talked about how you can get started. So this can be a good, for anybody who's an amateur and wants to do their first research paper.
Excellent tips, Suman. I can relate to one of my previous experiences. Actually, I published one paper on cybersecurity a while ago, and it made me recollect all those memories. Like, it's all about comparing what's already there and trying to add something new so that you can prove your mettle. And yeah, as you mentioned, like, probably, of course, I'm not there yet in terms of publishing 15 papers and all, but yeah, I can relate to maybe once you start doing 5 or 6, maybe 7th and 8th onwards, it will be easy. So wonderful tips out there. And so far you have published 15 papers, right? And out of which, what is your favorite one and why?
Okay, I think being on the emotional side, I guess I will talk about a paper that is on, resource conflict management using graph theory. So it talks about an algorithm that reduces the waiting time of a project where a resource is associated with multiple tasks or, subtasks or sub-projects. So you get organizations or companies where you have one person who's like indispensable. You have to get them in like 5 projects. So what happens to the other 4 projects when he or she is working on one? It becomes tough. So how do you manage that particular resource? So I came up with an algorithm using graph theory, and that would optimize and reduce the waiting time of such projects. So this paper is pretty close to me for one big reason. I talked about my college professor. His PhD topic was on graph theory. So he was doing his thesis, and he was the very reason why I started with research papers and felt like a tribute back to him. So it will always be a special paper for me, because I did it like after 3-4 years of publishing my last paper and coming to a real problem and solving it on the basis of academic knowledge. Graph theory is an academic topic. I mean, you can relate it with anything, that's a different thing altogether, but getting that particular hunch from my professor that, okay, this problem can be solved like this, and publishing it externally, I think it's a very special paper. More than favorite, I think it's a very special paper.
But you scared me, because this discrete structures and graph theory used to be one of the toughest subjects during the engineering days. All right, good one.
An interesting point here. I mean, I didn't buy that graph theory book. I was, borrowing it from the library in my bachelor days. After my exams were done, I was like, this is important. I have to get this book now. So I bought this book after I had attended the exam.
Interesting.
And I actually started diving into the topic later.
Good. So, Suman, when it comes to the approach towards paper writing, right, where should someone begin or start from the thought process perspective? Because I see the trend towards many people getting enrolled for masters, right? And maybe in 5 years or 10 years, we might see similar trend in terms of people aspiring or looking out for pursuing their PhDs and all. And at that point in time, definitely it will be a crucial. So we would need your inputs in terms of where should people start from the thought process perspective before even writing a research paper.
I still doubt if I am giving the right advice here. Let's share my journey, how I started. It is easy for a person to have an idea already. I mean, if you have a focus area that you're currently working on, finding a problem statement that you want to solve is pretty easy to find. But what about a person who wants to get into research and you don't really have a topic in mind that you want to work on? That's where the challenge comes up. It's really a challenge for somebody who wants to start afresh but is completely new. And that was more or less my situation when I restarted my journey of publishing and looking into research after 3.5 years. And it starts with the toughest job, let me tell you. It starts with the toughest job, that is reading. Now, to form the basis of a good research paper, it is all about understanding what other researchers or your fellow colleagues have done for the same topic. What are the similar works that have been worked on? The common term that we refer to as part of this is called a literature survey. So you really understand what you're working on and you read through similar papers or journals or magazines that focus on this particular topic. Now, even if one doesn't have a topic to work on, we all do have an interest. It would be lie to say that a person comes up and has worked or is part of academics and doesn't have a specific topic of interest. So pick your topic of interest. Read similar works in leading conferences and journals, as I mentioned, published in the last 3-4 years. You definitely don't want to read something from 2000s and come up with an enhancement of what was done in early 2000s and say this is relevant in 2021. That is definitely not going to work. So read something from the last 3-4 years and not beyond that. Make a note on what, why, and how for each of those papers. Now, what is the problem statement? Why is it being considered? And how are they solving it? These are the 3 questions that you should be asking. And noting it down in probably an Excel or a notepad. I preferred Excel. I know some of my fellow colleagues and my fellow researchers who prefer a notepad, pretty old school, but that's what they like. So figure out which one you are comfortable with. Write each of these 3 questions down. And then once you have done it, figure out what are the open problems left by each of these papers or magazines or journals or whatever entry or an article that you're reading. Once you have the problem statement, try solving it of your own. If you find a solution, try backing it up with a POC, a mathematical model or a simulation, and try to prove why your solution is better than what everybody has suggested before and why it is an advantage. You're already through with one paper without spending much time on it. What you have done is just read through 1,000 papers. 1,000 is too much. Maybe 10 papers. When you have read through 10 papers, you have clearly figured out one open statement. You have solved it and you have proved why it is better. There you go. You have your first paper for your publication.
Excellent, Suman. From research perspective, what are some of the trending topics now? Because nowadays, the current world is overwhelmed with the latest trends and technologies.
There are a lot of research going on in different fields if we consider the field of computer science. You have the likes of artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, robotic process automation, commonly known as RPA, cybersecurity, quantum computing, IoT, big data. There are a lot of things which are happening around the globe. Even you take the likes of edge computing. So all of a sudden you enter a world which is filled with pandemic, and then the need for virtual environments, virtual meetups come into the picture, and there enters your scope for doing augmented reality, virtual reality, to make people believe that they are somewhere although they are not, to give them that realistic experience. Even that falls as part of a trending topic, and some very exciting things are happening around, and if somebody is interested to pick up topics, I think they will never be short of any.
Yeah, absolutely. Sky is the limit in the current situation. You practically covered all aspects of it. A couple of things that I was thinking, just to augment the illustrative list that you have mentioned. Edge computing and virtual reality and augmented reality are the 2 things that I thought, are the additions to the exhaustive list that you already mentioned. So we talked about, research. We talked about getting formal education based on research. Obviously PhD is the automatic thing that comes to our mind. So how a research paper that I created, for example, is going to help me in obtaining a PhD down the line?
It is really important because of 2 aspects. Especially if you're not into academics, if you have lost touch, let's say, and you are into industry and working and you still have PhD in your mind, you want to pursue your PhD. It is necessary for every scholar to publish their works in leading journals and conferences. It becomes part of their mandatory syllabus that you have to fulfill some credit points and get your works published in reputed conferences or journals and magazines. So consider someone who does it even before enrolling and uses this as a means to be attracted to or attached to academics. Now, this creates a massive lift for the individual's profile. Now, this is one side of the story. As I started the topic, that you are away from academics, but you are talking about industry and you haven't done much research. But there's a lot which happens in terms of academics. You take the latest algorithms, probably coming up in some university somewhere, and you are working on a topic on a regular basis. So think about bringing together both the knowledge, what you're learning in industry, and then getting together the flavor of academics. You get an amalgamation of work done that can be, taken forward. All of a sudden it comes to your mind that yes, this can be a research taken forward and probably your way of, getting your PhD. So, one side of it is it keeps you updated. Second is probably one fine morning it will strike you that yes, these are the topics which can be combined, academics and industry and whatever I have been doing and what I'm learning and, taken forward for your PhD studies.
Fabulous stuff. I think you covered about networking, being visible, connecting with academia and all. Many a times people overlook the connections with academia. But honestly speaking, all the technologies that we are seeing today, the Ethernet, the Wi-Fi, the WAN, and be it the grid computing, cloud computing, any technology, right, that is born in a lab in a university first, right? But many people think, okay, industry is creating this and we are feeding back to academia, but that is not true. Academia is creating the technologies and where industry is using them, but it is often misunderstood. And definitely it is worth getting connected, talking about some reputed universities like MIT's, Georgia Institute of Technology, and all those prominent universities in the world, right? They are all known for the computer science evolution. And if we briefly look at their history, they are the ones who pioneered many of these technologies. So very well put through, Suman. And great conversation so far, but it has been very professional. So let us add some spice to create some fun and look at the other side of Suman. Are you ready for a quick rapid fire question wherein we are going to ask you a few questions and you can crisply answer them in a word or two likewise?
Sure, Naveen.
Perfect. So let me start with the first question out of the rapid fire. What is the most memorable moment in your life so far, Suman?
I guess we'll be clearing my SAP interviews about 7 years ago. The journey has been splendid and my accomplishments are a lot because of what SAP has given me. Yeah.
Awesome. Here comes the next bullet. In your next life, who would you like to be reborn as?
I have a thing for Steve Jobs. I do carry those turtlenecks. I have some of them in my collections, the black t-shirts. Even see, I'm still wearing a black one right now. More because of that great man, Steve Jobs, it would be.
the famous turtleneck t-shirts, right? Yeah. Here comes the next bullet. Which animal would you compare Suman with?
That's actually a tricky one. I would say an owl because that's what my colleagues and friends often refer me to as. You probably ping me at 3 o'clock and then I'm available. They call me a night owl at times. So it's been so since college.
Okay. Next one. The best compliment that you have ever received. Wow.
It was from another college professor. I have been talking about one of them already. So this was from a college professor from my bachelor days. For a year, I thought he criticized me a lot. And he was respected around the campus, one of the best guys to teach me a lot of things. And on the day of our project submission, the last day of the first year, he calls out the entire class and says, "This guy is logically better than me. Why didn't all of you, take time and learn something from this person?" You have been seeing him criticize you for a year and all of a sudden, this is something that he says in front of everybody. I cannot, forget this I'll take this to my grave probably. I'll remember this for the last breath of my life.
Absolutely. That's a huge compliment, Suman. I know you will cherish this forever. And Suman, you are one of the very few professionals in the industry who has a lot of inclination towards this research and research papers, right? So I'm wondering, what have you dreamt of becoming in the future during your childhood?
I always dreamt of being a journalist.
Okay, great going so far. So one last one for the rapid fire. If you were given a chance to change something in the past, what would it be?
Well, I don't think there's much because I'm kind of satisfied with everything. Every experience teaches you something. Although, if I have to pick one, probably I would have started playing football when I was 10 years old and not 23. I play for the SAP team, but yeah, if I probably would have started at 10 years old, I might have done something in football as well.
You would have represented your school and probably gone to the nationals or something. Yeah, interesting.
I was a fat kid, by the way, so not sure though.
Great rapid fire so far. So thank you for the amazing answers, and over to you, Sudhakar.
Thank you for that amazing rapid fire session, Suman. One final question for this session. What is your one piece of advice to those aspiring to make big in their careers?
One side of it is to be updated. I mean, you being a technology enthusiast, it is always important to know what's happening around. The way it was 20 years or even 10 years before, it is not the same now. I remember my dad coding in Visual Studio, and then there was Java, and today we talk about Python. 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, there was something else. So it's very important for a techie to be logically sound so that whatever comes up, you can relate with the bigger picture. The other aspect is look at things with empathy. I mean, technology changes, as I said, fast, and the buzzwords fizzle out with time. Our logical side is what keeps us afloat and, focus and helps us focus on creating value or targeting the right problem statement. That is what is important. One needs to focus on the impact that we create rather than what sophisticated technology we use. I mean, it's nice to use some buzzwords, and it often gives us the leverage of saying that, okay, we are working with this technology, that technology, but at the end of the day, if you're not solving your customer's problem, if you're not really addressing your problem statement, it doesn't make sense. And to conclude this part, I would end with this discussion with probably a question to you too. You have been asking questions. Let's have it the other way around. So
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll probably give you a use case, and so the use case goes like this. Around a couple of decades back, I guess, there was a problem statement which came from multi-storied buildings. They said the people who were residing there or had their businesses there mentioned that it took a lot of time for them to reach the topmost floor. So if it is a 50-storied building, it would take a lot of time. So once these complaints started coming up, they consulted some vendors. I don't remember which vendor were consultant. They came in, they took a round of feedback from the people who were residing or had their businesses in those multi-storied buildings. And they made some changes, I guess. And after a few months, they again came back and asked those residents and people who were staying there or the business owners, like, if the lifts have become faster. The response was amazing. They said, yes, the lifts are faster and they hardly take any time to reach the topmost floor. So the question to you guys is, what was the change that these guys made, or were there any changes done at all in the first place?
I think the thought that someone heard my problem and someone empathetically paid attention to my problem itself addressed most of the problems, or they changed the lift button pattern.
I'm really not sure. So probably my left brain is not working. Is it something got to do with adding another high-speed motor?
Maybe they dedicated some lifts for some floors, like 1 to 10 this lift, 1 to 20, or 10 to 20 this lift.
Yeah, maybe they came up with this parallel car approach. Instead of just relying on one car or the one lift, maybe they come up with one more, and that could be my take. I don't know if I'm correct or wrong.
No, I mean, we really need to think out of the box here. That should be one clue. Okay, I'll probably give you the answer. It was mirrors.
They were not feeling doing nothing, huh? Wow.
The beauty of this particular use case was, one might be thinking about probably they use some pulley or some mechanical things, or they increase the speed of the lift, but actually it was not so. They had to give a diversion to the people while they were going from the ground floor to their intended floors. They had nothing to do. It was about giving them a diversion. They had nothing to do while they were going up. Maybe, look at them and figure out, okay, have they lost some weight? or am I looking beautiful, or something like that, something which will keep them busy. The problem statement here was not about the speed. It was about how they were spending time while they were going to the topmost floor or their intended floor. Mirror was the answer to it. The vendor who actually took interest in this particular use case understood what the problem statement was, understood what end users were facing. So they were not thinking about how complicated the technology is. They were thinking about what is the actual problem. The actual problem was not speed, but it was the time that the end user spent inside the lift. So this probably opens up one more channel or for next discussion sometime later. That is about design thinking, where you can put yourself into customer shoes and you can take this forward. So that's probably for another day, but I would like to conclude this my side of how one can aspire for making their careers big with this particular point.
Suman, this has been amazing, and definitely thank you for leaving us the option to have one more session with you, and thank you for identifying the topic as well, design thinking. We will definitely get back to you. But today's discussion about importance of research in technical roles has been amazing. The examples that you have shared and the use cases that we talked about, I'm sure our audience are going to love this conversation, and we really appreciate you taking time for us this afternoon. And thanks for your time.
Thanks for inviting me, Naveen, Sudhakar. It was a really good experience for me as well. Really love being on board with you guys. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And folks, if you have liked this episode, please share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues for whom you care for. Because the Guiding Voice podcast series is a purely not-for-profit venture, and our team puts in a lot of effort to bring the best conversations to all our listeners. And our purpose is very clear. We want to provide curated guidance to all the professional students out there, be it from engineering, B schools, and all the IT employees and entrepreneurs, so that all of you can make informed decisions based on the insights that are driven by the industry experts, coaches, leaders, or academicians across the globe. Because if you share this with your friends, it helps them also learn great insights from every episode. Or if you're listening to the Guiding Voice podcast on the Apple podcast, please do not forget to leave a review and a 5-star rating, because every rating will help us expand our reach and contribute to our mission to shape the careers and lives of millions of people across the globe. And if you are watching the episode on YouTube, please do not forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And last but not the least, I want to reiterate, please share with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues. Thank you so much in advance. Alright, so it brings us to the trivia segment of today's episode. And today's trivia is about AOL, which stands for America Online. So folks, do you know what was AOL's original business? Okay, you may start thinking or googling, but let me tell you the answer in the interest of time. So folks, it started out as an online gaming company called Control Video Corporation. So that was their original business. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you for listening. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Take care. Be safe. Until next time. Bye-bye. And we are signing off for today.